we made a bomb.
Oh,
As a kid, just experimenting, having some fun.
the mic's going in and out.
Oh, can we get in now? That's because I think must be the
batteries.
no, not the batteries, probably the police got excited. They're all coming in. It's okay. So anyway, one of the things I did, my best friend, his brother was a chemist, so he borrowed some of the what's it called, the chemicals, and I supplied the tin can. That was my responsibility. And we made a bomb. My friend was a genius. The bomb went off, bang, and I was so excited. It worked. The trouble is that sometimes instead of giving kids, the praise and say, well done, it's an amazing thing you did, and giving them some reward or something, the park keeper found me and my friend. We got in big trouble. So last time I did that again. That's the trouble when people get innovative. When they get innovative, people don't appreciate the hard work and the gambles and the difficulties they do. I could have been another Alfred Nobel. But instead, you were punished instead. That's no way to treat anyone who does anything wrong. You forgive them. When you forgive them, you teach them, yeah, it's great to do that, but be careful next time. Hi, welcome. We just, hi. But that's why a lot of people suffer a great deal. There was one lady I was counseling over in Australia many years ago, and she was dying of cancer, and she had lived a good life. But then one of the things I asked her before she passed away was, what's the worst thing you've ever done in your life? And I said, you can tell me, because, you're going to die soon anyway. And I said I would never tell anybody. I've told thousands of people. But I don't think she would mind, because the example was a very good example. She said that, she was an elderly lady by now. She said that once, only once in her life, she'd kissed another woman's husband. She kissed another woman's husband. And when she said that, honestly, I said to her, is that the worst you've ever done? Only once. Yeah, that's not bad. Is that bad? Only once? Because that's all your partner's ever done. You're a very lucky wife. Can't you forgive yourself when you put it into perspective? A lot of times people can't forgive themselves because when they don't share any of their faults with anybody else, you're
fine.
Okay, I'll be still. When you can't share your mistakes with other people, you tend to exaggerate them all the time. When you exaggerate them, you really feel it's the worst thing you've ever done in your life. And that is a problem. You're not seeing things clearly and putting it into perspective. If you put them into perspective and see it clearly, it's so easy to let go of. And she was very happy with me that once that she confessed the worst fault, then she could let it go so much easier. What about me? What's some of the even worse things I've done in my life? There was some years ago, I might get into trouble for this, but here we go again. You can answer the questions afterwards. I'm leaving Sheffield tomorrow. I'll be back again. There was a time when there were so many monks over in Thailand who were not keeping their precepts. So one evening, I looked to my audience, much more than this, over in Perth, and I said, it's about time I was honest with you. And I made my confession. I said, many years ago, I spent some of the happiest moments of my life in the loving arms of another man's wife. We kissed, we hugged, we loved each other. Was that bad? Some of you said you've been following my talks for a long time. You must have forgot this one. I spent some of the most wonderful hours of my life in the loving arms of another man's wife. That was my mother. That's my dad's wife. We kissed, we hugged. And I often like mentioning stories like this because sometimes we jump to conclusions and that makes the thing exaggerated beyond all proportions. But even so, I've known many people who have, for one reason or another, had difficulties in their life. I was talking about one of the fellows yesterday. He was a prisoner in jail close to our monastery in Perth. He was in the jail. We used to go, actually, I used to go into the jail to teach the prisoners how to meditate. I had a really devoted lot of people coming to learn meditation in jail. The first time I went there, I had almost the whole prison came to listen to my talk on meditation. I was so inspired. I never thought that prisoners were so keen on spirituality until one of the prisoners stood up, said, "Is it all right if I ask a question?" When I looked at him, he was about 6'4", scars all over him. He was one of the leaders in the gang in that prison. And when he asked a question, anyone like that ask a question, I would say, "Yes, sir." Please always call him sir, otherwise you get in big trouble. So anyway, he asked his question. And his question was, is it true that through meditation, you can learn how to fly over walls? I'm not making this up. It's happened. And I said, actually, it takes a long time. It's very difficult, but it can be done. And then afterwards, the next week I went there, only 3 people turned up to my class. But I enjoyed teaching in prisons because every time I taught in a prison, I never saw a prisoner. I never saw a criminal. I never saw a thief, a rapist. I never saw a murderer. In all those years, all I ever saw was a person who had committed a crime. I made a big distinction there. Because a person does a terrible thing, it doesn't really make them an evil forever. And this particular person, I like to quote Carl. He was in prison for rape. Real, it wasn't sort of set up. And got to know him by visiting jail. And we were teaching a meditation retreat, and our cook couldn't come. The cook's husband got a cancer. So it's more important that she looked after her husband at this time. So we were stuck about 3 or 4 days before the retreat with no cook. And then there's this friend who was in prison, and he was eligible for work release. And the prison officers knew me, the governor, the superintendent knew me. And so I asked, can he come and cook for our retreat on work release? He said, yeah. So I had this guy at our retreats doing all the cooking, all for free. He was a brilliant cook. I still remember the pizza he used to make from scratch. He'd come early in the morning from jail and get to work and make pizzas and lots of other food. He was a genius at cooking, and he worked so hard. And also, he was so kind and helpful for all the other people who came on the retreat. And at the end of the retreat, we usually tell people, please, Now, please say thank you to all the people who helped on the retreat. Show some gratitude. And they did. But then they complained to me. They said, look, where's Carl gone? He was a brilliant cook. He was so kind. He was so helpful. But we can't find him. Where's he gone? And only then did I let them know. He said, he's gone back to jail. And that really shocked them. I said, why are you shocked? He's a prisoner. What did he do? They said, he's in jail for rape. And they were stunned. They said, you let a person who, you let a rapist come and cook for us during the retreat? I said, no. I let a person who, when he was young, under drugs, did that terrible crime. He's not a rapist anymore. These are things which we can forgive, even something like which really hurts other people. You have to pay off those debts, emotional debts, society debts later on. And this is a start of him paying that back by serving others, making sure they have a retreat where they have good food and a healthy time. And I said, that's actually how I would advise people to forgive. I know sometimes people criticize me when they said, no, you should not forgive. It's too dangerous. And I said, it's not just forgiving. It's adding that extra onto it. You forgive, and you can see how you make sure that never happens again, and you can pay off some of the karmic debts, what you did. But you never be able to pay back any karmic debt if you still feel that you are a bad person. Another good example of that, one of the stories which I hope every one of you has heard, it's one of my favorite stories, the two bad bricks in the wall. How many of you remember that story? Okay, a few of you. The two bad bricks in the wall was when we first went over to Australia to build a monastery, and we could not afford to get a builder. And because we couldn't afford to get a builder, I had to do the bricklaying. Now, my background, you know what my background was? Was as an apprentice to bricklayers? No. I was starting off from making bombs as a kid. I went further to go to Cambridge as a theoretical physicist. I was in my head. I didn't know how to lay bricks. But then, why not? Let's learn. So I learned how to lay bricks. Took all the time in the world because no one was paying me. And so because of that I laid my first brick wall. If any of you ever goes to my monastery south of Perth in Western Australia, please don't ask where that wall is. It is still there. These two bad bricks are still there, but they're in the monks' toilets. So please don't ask where they are. Anyway, so I laid my first wall, and after laying the wall, of course, what you always do, you look back upon it and say, well, and then I saw the two crooked bricks. Now look at all the bricks in the walls here, they're all even. These two bricks, I don't know how it happened. They were crooked, out of line, and they spoiled the whole wall. And I was so embarrassed. One thing which I was at that time was very proud, egotistic. My first wall, other people would see it. I wanted to make sure that people liked it. I didn't even like it myself. It was really crooked. So because of that, I tried to get those two bricks out. The cement in the joints was so hard, it was like diamond. I couldn't get them out. So I asked the other monk with me, can we afford some dynamite? We'll blow it up and start again, or bulldozer. Honestly, we were really poor, so we couldn't afford anything. So I was stuck with those two crooked bricks. My next plan was to make sure that if any visitors came, I would be their tour guide, so I could take them somewhere else. But I couldn't I even had nightmares over that. Waking up in the morning, oh my goodness, and they all want to support this monastery when they see how we waste money on cooking bricks. So after a while, I was so depressed by the 2 crooked bricks in my wall, spoiled everything. And then one day this guy came and he saw that wall and he said, "That's a beautiful wall. Who did that?" I didn't confess yet. I said, "Can't you see those 2 crooked bricks? That's a terrible wall. I built that." And then the man said, "No, it's a beautiful wall." "What about the 2 crooked bricks?" I said. He replied, "What about the 998 perfect bricks?" And you got the message, which changed a lot of my life. Why is it when you make a mistake, that's all you ever focus on? A mistake. You never look at the 998 good bricks you lay in the wall, or the wonderful times, when you didn't hurt anybody, when you weren't drunk or on drugs, and you didn't really know what you were doing and you hurt somebody else and had to be punished by going to jail. What about those other times? I don't know if you'll agree with this, but there's another gentleman right now in Carnet Prison Farm, where Carl used to be. He was a murderer. And apparently the other monks who go there have been telling me, he goes around saying, "It's only 2 murders. I've only done 2 murders, only 2 bad bricks in his life." How do you feel about that? How I feel? Well done, whoever that man is. The murders have been done. He'll have to pay some sort of compensation, or not compensation, something in his life to heal and help other people. But you don't bring a person back into life again because, you've hurt somebody that badly. Instead, you try and make amends as much as you can, however you can in your life. Use any bad things you've ever done, forgive and act so it never happens again. And okay, sometimes I've got to be careful about being egotistical, but this was one of the best pieces of praise I've ever received in my life. One day I got a telephone call, from one of the prison officers in the jail system, and he asked me, "Can I come back to his jail to carry on teaching? I want you to come and do the same classes as you did last time." I said, "I can't. I'm just really too busy." You've heard those excuses before? Being too busy. "I've got to come to Sheffield. I've got to go to other places." He said, "Yes, but," he said, "he's about to retire from work. And there's one thing he's never seen before. Every prisoner who came to my classes, everyone," he said, "zero recidivism. Once they come to your classes, they never go back to crime anymore." And if someone tells that to you, and it's a prison officer, no, he's not a Buddhist. He said, "Everyone who comes to your classes, don't know what you're doing, but we want you to carry on doing it." They do know how to forgive themselves and get their life back into order again. And as for Carl, again, he was at Bodhinyana Monastery last week doing some landscaping work. Really happy to have him there. This is what happens when you have a good attitude to forgiveness and people take that opportunity and they will never do any crime again. He's married now with a kid and also a lovely dog. I always like to see his dog when he comes to monastery. The dog just sits there. It's quite a violent breed, but when the dog's in a monastery, he loves it. Carl loves it too. These are true stories about the power of forgiveness when it's done properly. And sometimes people ask me, is there anything which cannot be forgiven? I've never found anything which cannot be forgiven yet. And that's a really quite a claim. I've seen some terrible, hurtful, harmful things which people have done to one another, but I've never seen anything which cannot be forgiven. And if any of you, especially people who are very close to family members, if any one of you misbehaves, the other partner, please, first thing to say to them, I forgive you. And see how powerful that is. In all forms of life where there are problems, and I'm saying about relationships, I've been a monk for over 51 years. I know all about marriage. I've never been married, of course, but simply because so many people have come up and sort of try to get some help whenever there's any problems in the relationship. And I've done so many marriage ceremonies in my life. And honestly, I know all about marriage. And I'm being serious now. When two people come together and want to join their lives together, I often tell them, once you are married, I love doing this in the ceremony. I look at the husband and the wife right in front of me. They've just been married. And I say, you're a married man now. You've changed. From now on, I don't want you to ever think of your wife. And one of the first times I did this, the family members were listening to me. Suddenly went quiet. I didn't need to have psychic powers to read their minds. What they were thinking was, who is this crazy guy who's come to teach, my daughter or my husband or my son about marriage? But I carry on. Once you're married, you must never think of your partner. You must never think of yourself. That's a mistake in a relationship. That's why it all goes wrong. Some of you just think of yourself, what you can get out of a marriage or a relationship, and others think, no, what I can give to my partner. Both are wrong. Once you are married in a relationship, please remember only to think of us. You're in it together. When you think of the other partner, that's when you lose it. You get burnt out. How many people sometimes feel burnt out in a relationship, in a marriage? What's given to you? You get nothing back for yourself. Or those people who just want to get as much as they can for themselves. Both wrong. You're in it together. That's why sometimes I'm going to get into trouble again here. That's why there's a couple of Sri Lankans in the back over there. It's already said, Ayubowan. Sometimes in a marriage ceremony, I say that before you're married, you're just like a two-legged animal. You can go whichever way you want. But when you're married, you're like a four-legged animal. One body, four legs. Like an elephant. One of the traditional symbols in countries like Sri Lanka. But because of Sri Lankan tradition, the front legs of the elephant have to be the man. The back legs have to be the woman. But in Sri Lanka, please know, elephants always walk backwards. Do you agree? But wherever you are,
Maybe they walk sideways.
sideways is even better. Go around in circles, I don't know. But anyway, you're in it together. So that's one of the reasons why that it's not who's in charge. We're both in charge. We're a team. We care for one another. And the reason I mention that as a part of forgiveness ceremony or forgiveness is that one of the wedding ceremonies which I performed was a celebratory wedding. And this was this lady over in Kuala Lumpur. Any Malaysians here? Okay, her name was Zandria. She had her own TV show, her own TV show. And so she was a celebrity. She married one of her producers. And so it was a big celebrity wedding. And she wrote in Vogue, I think, Vogue Malaysia magazine. I've actually was the only time I've ever been in a celebrity magazine. Vogue, not for my dress. I shouldn't have done that. Sorry. Is it working still? Yeah. I gotta hold it in. Not for not for my fashion sense. Have I got good fashion sense?
And you I'm saying that about myself. We're beyond fashion.
Yeah, beyond fashion, yes. So, but that was photographed in there just because, her celebrity wedding, who was doing the marriage ceremony, it's me. And I remember she did an MC role for me a couple of years later, where we did a big talk in Kuala Lumpur. And one of the things which she said in this magazine, that one of the best things of the marriage ceremony was I asked them, her and her new husband, and they accepted this. They've been doing this every year on the anniversary of their wedding, or as close as they can to it, to do a forgiveness ceremony together. And they've been doing that for years. They have some dinner or even just a cup of tea, doesn't matter what, but in private, just the two of them. And one says to the other, they can take it in turns, who starts? No, darling, my wife, if there's anything which I've done over the past 12 months, by body, by speech, by mind, even by thought, intentional or just by accident, which has hurt you, offended you, disappointed you, or things which I didn't do, which I should have done, but I forgot about, sincerely, I ask your forgiveness. I love you. I care for you, but I make mistakes. Because I make mistakes, I don't know whatever it was, but please forgive me. I ask for your forgiveness. And then you don't know if you've done anything wrong, but I guarantee if you've been married or living together for 12 months, I'm sure there's quite a few things. Assume that. And then the other one says, this is one thing which I've always was impressed with when the first time I read Buddhist texts. If you ask forgiveness with sincerity, you must always be given that forgiveness, always, with no strings attached. And then it's the time after giving your forgiveness, you tell your partner, darling wife, or darling husband, whichever you start with, if there's anything which I have done too, by body, by speech, by mind, which has hurt you, disappointed you, which I don't remember, or things I should have done, which I haven't done. Please, I ask forgiveness of you too, sincerely. And you give that forgiveness. You discuss what it was afterwards. But right now, it's a general acknowledgement that you're not perfect. You make mistakes, as we all do. And so when we make mistakes, sometimes, we can say straight away, or sometimes we're busy, we've got our work, we've got our jobs, we may be overseas, maybe sick, or attending to the sick, even though, it may have hurt you. I'm sorry. And you mean it. Please forgive me. When that happens, at least once a year, you have this beautiful act of kindness, wisdom, love, of forgiveness, which means you don't carry anything for years and years and years like some people do. Because people carry things for years and years and years, it is like a cancer which eats at you inside. You lose the trust of your partner. And trust is one of the most important qualities which keeps us living a happy life together. Even if we could do that, not just in our families, but also in our work, Wouldn't it be wonderful if in a company you do make mistakes sometimes? You do things wrong. Instead of having to always kind of hide it, you can tell our boss, look, I'm sorry. I did make a mistake. I'm not trying to get away with anything. I just want to let you know. Honestly, please. Or even in another bigger family which just came to my mind, sometimes this Sri Lankan girl, just happened to be Sri Lankan, this one, over in Perth. She's been coming to my classes ever since she was really a kid. I know her so well. And she came up to me one day and said, I'm in big trouble, Ajahn Brahm. Please, can you help me? I said, of course, what is it? And she was at university. She said she got pregnant with her boyfriend. It does happen. And then I asked her straight away, have you told your parents? And she said, no, they'll kill me if I told them. That's what I've come to you for. Can you tell them for me, please? And honestly, I felt kind of honored that I'd been trusted with that role to tell the parents to get her out of a jam. But afterwards, I gave a whole talk on this subject. Why is it that our children lie to us, the parents? Why is it you can't trust that the parents will always tell you the truth? And the reason is because sometimes they're scared. They don't trust their parents enough. And one thing which, because of that situation, when I do have the honor to do a marriage ceremony, I tell the parents, please, I'll tell the couple, if you do have kids, once the kids are old enough, please tell them, son, daughter, if you get into any trouble, as long as you're honest with mum and dad, you can tell us anything, and you will have amnesty. I won't shout at you or punish you. Parents are here to help, not to punish. I don't want you to ever feel scared about telling mum or dad any problems or troubles you've got into. We're here for you. And then, but if you lie or you don't tell it truthfully, then, okay, you can be liable for some scolding or punishment or whatever. But when your kids get into problems, isn't it wonderful to be able to trust your parents instead of being afraid of them? But sometimes, instead of just saying that, that the precepts of Buddhism say you shouldn't lie, instead of just saying you should enforce that, say, no, why do people lie? Why do people lie to those that they really love and care for? Because they're afraid. We take away that fear and said, your parents, or especially your monk or your nun are here. We will never lie to you. You can tell us anything. And as long as if you're dying of cancer and it's only a small thing and it's a good story, then I might tell other people afterwards. But most people you never tell because you want to make sure that people trust you. You can be there to serve and help. That's the power of forgiveness. How many of you get into trouble and you feel so alone? Like, you've got this really difficult problem, you've got to face it for yourself. And no one really listens to you. The police, they're not listening. There's the counselors, even they sometimes don't listen enough. You start with forgiveness, the openness, and then let people say, then it's amazing just how much resources we can find. How many other people have been in difficult places with drugs or alcohol or just getting into trouble with sexual misconduct? How many other people just would really love to have someone they can trust and they know they can trust them? You won't be scolded or embarrassed, but you'll be listened to with kindness. And we can make solutions. Even if there are no solutions available yet, we can find solutions. This is actually where that forgiveness is so important, Usually we do that first. I don't know what it is you've done, but you're totally 100% forgiven. And you mean that. And then we can listen to you. And then because you know you're not in danger, you don't hide anything, then it's truth. Once forgiveness is understood, then there's an opportunity to know the truth and find out ways to make it a much happier relationship. That's just like with Carl. My goodness, he was a rapist before, multiple rapists. I trusted him. And I've always found, that people live up to your trust. Imagine you got into really difficult situations and somebody really does trust you. You will never hurt or harm them or destroy that trust, ever. And that's like with Carl. And that means that you can always listen to him, give advice, help, serve. And it also means that he doesn't feel that he's a hopeless case. When a person is not forgiven, it's like one stupid, bad, hurtful act just imprisons them for life. They may not be in a jail anymore, but they're that person who did that terrible, terrible, terrible crime. They become a criminal. I never want anyone to be like that. That's how you become free of past and have the opportunity to live a new life, literally. And just have the parents and friends be quite surprised how wise and kind you become. And when that happens, it means that nobody is stuck in the silly karma of the past. Even like, I'm just going to finish off, I'm not going to go much further with the talk because I've got questions and answers. Even a few people, as it keeps on happening, that parents come and ask me about what happens when someone commits suicide. There's so many more occasions of people committing suicide these days. Once they commit suicide, that really affects all the friends and family. You know, you love that person. And now they never tell you why. That's one thing which I have noticed in dealing with suicides, that it's a waste of time trying to ask, why did that happen? Why did that happen? Why did that happen? You'll never find out. But one thing you can always say, what happens to them afterwards? As Buddhists, especially Sri Lankan Buddhists, Thai Buddhists as well, but please excuse me, but Sri Lankan Buddhists, they usually say, oh, my son committed suicide. He's going to go to hell. That is total, I'm not allowed to say these terrible words, but I will. That's total bullshit. That's not what happens. And I'll explain why. I say that because I want you to remember it, because that causes so much pain and suffering to the family members. It's bad enough to lose your son or your daughter and then be told by some stupid monks, I don't mind saying that they're going to go to hell. Imagine, there's this one guy once, or a family, they came to see me at monastery, the whole lot of them. During our rains retreat, I was supposed to be meditating, but I broke that retreat because they were really in pain. They'd woken up in the morning and their son, who was a really good boy, could find nothing wrong with him. He was on the end of a rope on the veranda. He committed suicide that night. Imagine how that felt. And then they were told by another monk that their son is going to go to hell because of this. Imagine that. It's sad enough, you're hurting more than enough because your son's lost his life. Now you're telling he's going to be tortured for the rest of eternity in a hell realm. That's just crazy. So I asked him. He was about to do his university entrance exams. And I asked the father, what exams are they doing? How many subjects? I think in Australia there was 5 subjects they had to pass. How many papers in each subject? They said 2. That's 10 papers he will sit. How many questions in each exam? They didn't know, so maybe 8 questions. That's 80 questions he will be faced with. Imagine, just imagine that the first 79 questions he answers in those 8 papers are perfect answers, absolutely accurate, 10 out of 10. But the last question he answers, he really stuffs up, makes a big mess of. Does that mean you don't go to university? Getting 79 out of 80? What do you reckon? Go, yeah. Tao, you're a professor in a university in Hawaii. You were anyway. Would you recommend that that person goes into the university with 79 out of 80? Of course. Thank you for the answer, of course. So why is it when somebody, they've lived, this particular guy, 17 years of life, done perfectly well, never done a mistake in his life, always been kind and honest, and he's made one big mistake, the last thing he ever did. Does that mean you have to go and be punished for the rest of your life or the rest of eternity? That doesn't make any sense. Though your life is never judged by the last thing you do. Your life is judged as a whole. How have you been? What have you done? All the good karma you've done, not just one stupid act at the end. So, and that actually works, that argument. They all went home. Sad they lost their son. They never ever thought he'd be suffering anymore. That he would get reborn somewhere according to his good karma we'd done in the past. But it wasn't over-exaggerated. That's what forgiveness means. It's logical, reasonable, and it's helpful. Once it's helpful, then it means it takes away a lot of suffering in life. But what about all the bad things you've done? Then one of the nice things to do is to tell somebody. If it is your partner in life, that's one of the best things to do. But your partner has to be honest enough, trustworthy enough to say, darling, you can tell me anything. You'll disappoint me, but you're already forgiven. Imagine you had a partner like that. Wow. You don't ever want to lose them. Someone you trust, who's wise enough to help you learn from mistakes and never be punished for the rest of your life. Thank you for listening. Now, any questions? No? Okay.
We have to paraphrase them. There's no other mic.
There's no other mic. So please say the questions and I will repeat them loudly. Come on.
We'll take them all.
Forgiveness.
They're English.
Yeah.
So, like, how would you discipline like children?
Discipline.
Repeat the question.
How would you discipline children? My goodness, many children are afraid. They don't want to do anything wrong. You just tell them, why did you do that? Tell them with kindness, not with fierceness. What did you do? You shouldn't do that. You know, you get mummy and daddy in big trouble. Be kind, first of all. And ask them what they really did, why they did it. You say, please never do that again. It's not discipline, it's allowing the kid to learn. And to learn with kindness, never with fear. I don't know, when you grew up, were you afraid if people found out what you were doing or why you were doing it? A lot of times we hide things. And why people do that and hide things is ridiculous. Please, are you gay? No, okay. How many gay people we got here? 2, okay. Do you afraid of letting people know sometimes? Why? That's really hurtful. You're born gay. It's just who you are. You should be accepted. And imagine you never feel guilty about being gay. What about being a Buddhist nun? Do you feel guilty about that sometimes?
Never. There's only one of me.
It's
So it's a bit lonely.
a bit lonely. Why can't you have many more friends? And sometimes people almost convince you there's something wrong with you. You know, that you're a guy. I know my grandma always used to say, "You've got this really good degree. You could be doing so much in the world. Why are you becoming a monk?" Basically, that's who I am. You know, sometimes people don't accept the idea of being a monk. But I've been a monk 51 years now. And just even at the very beginning, when I was ordained as a monk, the first 3 nights I woke up in Bangkok, being ordained, with nightmares. I'm being totally honest with you. My nightmare was that I was a layman, not a monk. I opened my eyes and saw my brown robes folded in front of my bed. It's like I made it. I was a monk. That meant so much to me. And I closed my eyes and had a very nice deep sleep. And the same thing happened for 2 more nights. It kind of convinced me this is what I wanted to be, and I don't care what anybody else says about me. This is who I am. So, well done. You be gay or whatever you need to be, whenever you need to be it. And have a wonderful life. It's not because you're accepting because you want to be cool. You want to accept it because nothing else makes sense. That's why I've got over in Perth a couple of gay monks, actually more than one.
Yeah.
And they're great assets. They really help a lot of people. And also,
That's actually
yeah, they are, yeah. Transgender,
almost.
yeah, novice. So, you're welcome. That's how I feel. If you're going to be inclusive, the only way to be inclusive is to be forgiving. If anybody has made a mistake when they're growing up in life, doesn't matter, learn from it. You become so much wiser if you remember the mistakes you've made and never do it again. Punishment never makes sense to me. Every time which I got into trouble, I only learned not to be caught next time. I never realized why until later on in life. Okay, that's one question. I've got to be careful not to give a sermon after every question. But thank you for that. Did it answer it? Okay, very good. Next question, yeah.
Very related to the previous question, how would you heal a child that's been over disciplined, and is the first step coming with having to do forgiveness for the discipline element? Is that
It's a good question. How do you overcome
Yeah.
or heal a child who has been over disciplined? You can see the results of that. They're so fearful. They just whatever they do, it's like they're not really living properly. And I can only say another personal story. This is a story of my own father. He died when I was only 16. And he was not a disciplinarian. And I couldn't understand that because my brother and I deserved a spanking a couple of times, but my father couldn't do it. And the story behind this was when I asked him about my paternal grandfather. He was from Liverpool. Any Scousers here? Yeah, good idea. And the back over there, yeah. It's just the other side of the hills, the other side of the Pennines. But anyway, his father was a plumber, and really hard to find work during the Depression years, would get drunk very often, and he would come home, take off his belt, and he would whip any kid for any reason, which was he could see. So many times my dad said he was on the end of that belt for no reason at all. His father, my grandfather, was drunk. He could endure that, but what he could never endure was seeing my grandfather get off his belt and start whipping his wife, my dad's mum. He said, I couldn't help. And that was just so painful for him. But the other thing he said that to me, if ever he survived and had children, he would never discipline them. That's why a few times he got frustrated and upset, came into our bedroom about to sort of hit us. He said, I couldn't do it. It was impossible. He brought back all those memories, what his father did to him. And it's wonderful to see an example of somebody who actually learns, a very painful learning, why you shouldn't punish kids. They're just being kids. And now even in temples, Buddhist temples where I go, you see kids messing around, jumping up and down, making a lot of noise. If somebody ever tells them, so be quiet, I say, no, be noisier. They're being kids. And then the result of that is so many children who come to our monastery in Serpentine or city centre over in Nollamara in Perth, and they really just jump up and down, make a lot of noise. They feel welcome. Because they feel welcome. Now, I've been there for so many years now, that when they grow older, when they become mature, they have different problems, but they know they're always welcome. And they'll be listened to, never disciplined, but listened to. And it's easy to make them understand, look, you get into trouble this way. So just be quiet, listen off, run about sometimes, but when your mummy and daddy comes, be quiet. When I'm around, it doesn't matter. And that kind of works. And I see all these young people when they grow. Just recently, there was a funeral of one of my disciples. She was really old, but her granddaughter was, I think, 41, and she gave the eulogy. And she said how much she enjoyed coming to the Buddhist temple when she was young, as a little baby, simply because, that people understood her. She could jump up and down and run and make a noise. She was allowed to do that. It became a second home for her. So later on in her life, she had a resource which she would never lose. That's why you're welcome, sir. Anybody who has difficulty is welcome. Do you understand that? Sometimes discipline is to encourage people to do better things, but not through fear. Another question?
Maybe we take one from the live stream.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. We have to warm you all up. So you are welcome to ask anything because you're already forgiven, right? So even if the question is what you think stupid, you've been pre-forgiven. So the question here is, how can we learn to not be conceited?
Learn how not to be conceited. Sometimes anything which I've experienced, so many other people have experienced as well. And also, what is the goal of Buddhism? Why do you meditate? And sometimes people say, to be fully enlightened. Has anyone ever told you what that means? what it means is, this was from one of the suttas, the Buddha's texts, that this man, he was a monk, came up to the Buddha and said, one who's enlightened never ever thinks they're better than anybody else, never thinks they're worse than anybody else, never thinks they're the same as anybody else. The Buddha said, absolutely correct. And the second monks came up to the Buddha and said exactly the same. One who's fully enlightened never feels they're better, worse, or the same as anybody else. The Buddha turned around to his attendant Ananda and said, those were two new enlightened beings. They are so enlightened beings who understand the truth. Tell me that they're free. You never think you're better, never think you're worse, never think you're the same. Imagine what that feels like. Conceit is just disappeared. Sometimes you do a terrible talk. You don't have to be the best. Sometimes you give a great talk. You never think you have to be the worst. Sometimes you think you give a different talk. Of course, we always do. Ayatanda will never be the same as Ajahn Brahm. We're all different. It's beautiful to know that. So I'm going to give you a warning. If you see any monk or nun or teacher come up here and say, I am enlightened, that again is bullshit. You will never say that. Why?
Ajahn, I'm reminded of this monk, was it Keshu Dhammananda or somebody?
Yeah.
Who was asked, are you enlightened? And they said, no, but I'm highly eliminated.
Yeah.
That's really good, isn't it?
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
So the sense of ego, self-ownership, pride disappears. You do really silly things or stupid things. And instead of hiding it, you tell everybody. It's really funny. I always think it's funny anyway. You make a big mistake. What's the biggest mistake you've ever seen me make? Oh, come on. Come on.
Well, the one I've heard, one of the ones that I've heard
Yeah.
was when you did a marriage ceremony, you thought she was, what did you do?
Okay.
You said, oh, is this the
Okay.
husband? And it was the father, something like that. Did you do that?
Yes.
And didn't you also chant the funeral chant at the wedding?
Yes.
Yeah. What else did you do?
Okay. Can I say?
No, can I say one?
Yep.
This is controversial. You only ordained bhikkhunis in 2009, not in 2000 or 1999 or... Oh, no one's ever said that. They usually praise you for ordaining bhikkhunis in 2009. I'm just,
Yeah. Fair enough.
you know, having a bit of a debate. Yeah.
Yeah, true.
Don't think that was too late.
It was too late. It'd be wonderful if you could have done it earlier. But with the other two, which are much easier, and they were funny. But just not ordaining bhikkhunis was a bit sad. But
But you did it.
oh yeah, eventually. And I was very happy to. But this, no, some of these, please excuse me, but some of these men marry these young Thai ladies. They do that because the Thai lady wants a visa and wants a new lifestyle in the West. And anyway, this particular time, this young Thai lady came in to the hall, accompanied by this old Australian man to get married. And so straight away, I saw the two of them. Now she was about 20, and he was about 60 or 70, at least. And straight away, I just assumed, it's my mistake, that, oh, this must be the father of the bride, or the father, that's why you're coming in with her, or the father of the groom. And he looked at me, and just he scowled and said, no, I am the groom, not the father of the groom. But I really was thankful to his daughter, who was in the audience, and said, but you're old enough to be. And that was a bit of a criticism. I should never do that because I've seen, sometimes this very elderly man really did fall in love with a young lady and had a wonderful life together until he eventually passed away. It's not always the case. You can just judge by age. It must be just an arranged marriage or something, or marriage of convenience. But it was also, the one he didn't say, was that there was one of my disciples said, one of his relations had died. Can I do the funeral service? I said, of course. And then as there was a funeral, now the funeral service, I opened it up by saying, we're here today to mourn the death of my disciple's mum who passed away. And I knew I had a 50-50 chance of getting it right. And then this old lady stood up at the front and said, it's not me, it's my husband who's passed away. Instead of getting embarrassed, I tell everybody and everyone has a good laugh. You do make mistakes. And the other one was, it's interesting that at a marriage ceremony, which I did, the couple were very, very tired. No, I was very, very tired, because I do a lot of work. And sometimes I was so tired. When it came to do the chanting for the marriage, I did the wrong chanting. I did the funeral chants. Honestly, I did. And actually, I didn't tell them straight away. I was a young monk then. But then I told them afterwards. And I said, no, I'm terribly sorry. But, my mind, I thought I was doing the what's it called, the marriage chants. I just got it wrong. But even though I was doing the wrong chanting, my heart was really pure, wishing them well. The words were not actually what my mind was thinking or aiming at. So they're still happily together. They didn't die. Those things happen. And you can see the funny side of it. It's not intentional, as you want them to live a happy life, but just did the wrong chanting. There's a lot of stuff like that. But I don't get embarrassed about it because it causes so much happiness for people to listen to it. And you know the outcome afterwards was good. What else have I done which is stupid? I know. Yeah. You tried. Sorry?
Oh,
No,
what have I done that's stupid?
no. Yeah.
That's it. I can ask you because you won't embarrass me.
Yeah,
So I trust you. Yeah.
indeed. But sometimes you don't see what other people think is stupid. I don't see as stupid. Just made a little mistake. Who doesn't? So because of that, when people I never expect people to be perfect. I never expect me to be perfect. That's why you can be more perfect. You don't expect, you don't put pressure on people. Look, honestly, look at your partner. All of you have got your partner sitting next to you. And is your partner perfect? And to marriage counseling, I always use this and it's really good. And then I look at the wife and say, is your husband perfect? She said, no. And then I look at the husband, is your wife perfect? He says, no. I said, well, that's why you match. You belong together. You're both imperfect. Well done. So instead of getting angry at something which your partner does, which is kind of wrong or silly, please laugh at it. That was, many of you may have heard of my teacher, Ajahn Brahm. I was with him for 9 years. Every time I did a mistake, he would never scold me.
Oh, yeah. You asked for something in Thai.
Yes. I in those days, it was a small monastery. I needed some soap, to wash with. But I had to ask my teacher, Ajahn Brahm, in the local language, which was between Thai and Laotian. And the word for soap is saboo. So I asked for some saboo. He said, what? Saboo? What for? And to wash with. But then instead of saying saboo, the correct word, I said support. He was, what do you want support for? Support is pineapple. To wash with. That made him so happy. He laughed about that for days. And he said, oh, these people in London, they're so advanced. Much more advanced than people in Thailand. You know, in Thailand, we use this, soap. Over in London, they do use pineapple for water. And you can see the effect it had on me. I learned my lesson. But you can see the effect it had on Ajahn Brahm. It made him so happy. So when he had, that's one of the reasons why I had so many Western monks in those days. For the entertainment. For the good time. So isn't it much better? It's also more effective too. The laughter, I mean, I didn't feel like I was hurt. Humiliated, basically. But I deserved it. I should have been more careful with my speech. I learned the word for soap and pineapple much more quickly. And he had a lot of fun teaching. Isn't that wonderful when you teach with a way it causes laughter instead of fear? What type of world would you like to live in? So that's why we get as much laughter as we possibly can. This is why that sometimes people ask, what type of Buddhism are you teaching, Ajahn Brahm? And I say I like to have a synthesis, trying to bring different traditions together and use the H from Hinayana, Aha from Mahayana, and the Yana from Vajrayana. What does that spell? Mahayana. And only that's a much better way to actually convey the beautiful teachings of the Buddha. Instead of with seriousness, with this wonderful invited happiness. And even when eventually you do meditation, so you start off with a happy mind, it's so easy to let go of things. Be very peaceful and still, get into deep meditations and get all the way to enlightenment. Not through being serious, but being easy to let things go.
Any more questions in the hall? Yeah, over there. Can you paraphrase? So how can you forgive in a way that makes sure they don't happen again?
How you forgive, you give that person trust. I trust that you'll be able to do this. That's one of the first things. This was in deep meditations, we call those jhanas. And many people think, not me, I can't do that, that's too deep. One of my jobs is to convince everybody, yes, you can. It's possible. And once I keep talking about that again and again and again, it makes it possible. It may take some time, it certainly is possible. A lot of times I was taught, you cannot ordain women as bhikkhus. I don't know the reason it took so long.
Michuditi,
Yes,
wrong view.
indeed. But nevertheless, that's what I was taught. Because I thought it can't happen. That's one of the reasons why it didn't happen. Once you have a much more positive attitude in life, it's amazing what can happen. I was telling last night in the talk, the night before I think, that even like sicknesses, one of the things which you do, which is kind of on the edge of what monks are supposed to do, but it's very worthwhile, is like counseling people with cancer. The reason I do that a lot is because you see it works. And there are so many people who should be dead. They recover. One of these guys, what a Buddhist, over in Sydney, he came on one of my retreats. And the first day, or everybody else in the hall complained about it. It was making too much noise. And the complaint was, Ajahn Brahm, can you please tell people to breathe quietly? And then I said, it's my fault. I should have let you know that man is dying of a big tumor in his sinus. These doctors over in Sydney have given up on him. Decided to come on a meditation retreat just in case. And throughout the 9 days of the retreat, once I let people know that, people generally are so kind, never complained anymore. They actually just gave him so much space. Now you're dying. Now please breathe as loudly as you like. They had compassion, kindness for him. And then he was meditating, always making noises, until the very last day. It's always the last day when this is happening. And then he came running towards me and said, Ajahn Brahm, Ajahn Brahm, Ajahn Brahm. My last meditation I did, I heard a popping sound. That's how he said it, popping sound. And he could breathe through his nose for the first time in months. And then it closed up again. Nevertheless, it gave him like hope. Something weird had happened. And he wasn't imagining this. It surprised him. It was real. And then it closed up afterwards. About 6 months later, I was giving another talk in another venue in Sydney. And this guy came up to me and he said, do you remember me? Please, each one of you, don't ever say that to me. There are a lot of you I can remember, but there's so many people you see that sometimes you don't know. So I usually say, yes, I remember you. You're the person whose name I keep forgetting. That's an excuse. But anyway, this guy came up and I said, actually, no, I don't know you at all. Who are you? And that's when he said he was that person dying of cancer. Of course, when people are that sick, they look now really close to death. You cannot recognize them unless they get healthy again. So I carried on that meditation you taught me. Now I'm in full remission, totally healthy. Said I'm spending the rest of my life teaching others what you taught me. Thank you so much. And I said, you don't need to thank me. You're in debt to me. So the only way you can pay me off is by healing other people who have cancer. Once you've had 3 other people come up to you and say, thank you for teaching me how to overcome the cancer, then you're paying off your debt. It's called like forward paying. It's beautiful when that happens.
Is there anything else in here? We have one more on live stream, but we'll go here first. Yeah. So maybe live stream, we
Yeah.
leave it. Okay. Practicing when you live far away from the monastery.
You don't live far away from any monastery. It was always online. You always see so many sort of talks that you can get hold of. So what to do is if you have anything which is really amazing happen to you, where do you live? That's not far away from Anukampa Nuns Monastery at Oxford.
We have it online.
You have it online, but also that's one of the reasons why we're working hard to make sure there's Amawati Monastery, there's Anukampa Monastery over in Oxford, just outside of Oxford, actually just grows and grows and grows to serve more and more people, getting more monasteries all over the place. This is the one which Ayachandra has started. And this also means all of you women, we're doing something for equity, something which a lot of people never feel comfortable. Why do we have monasteries or churches or mosques where there's only men, no women? I don't know how you men feel. How do women feel? It's kind of disgusting. What if, so this is wonderful. We have the opportunity now to show that we're really being inclusive for everybody. I admit this. So many people have told me this, and I agree with it. There's many things which I can teach men about, which I cannot teach women about. I've never had that experience of growing up as a girl, of understanding the pressures and problems which you have, which are not really understandable by men. That's why we have women here. I had girlfriends, not more than one at a time. I was heterosexual before I became a monk. Honestly, I cannot really totally understand what it was like being a gay. But one of the things which always really struck me, I gave a talk over in Perth once, and this guy came up, he was one of the leaders of the gay community in Perth, and he said to me, religion has been so cruel to our gay community. And the way he said it, wow, that really sort of penetrated me. Being cruel to us, and we're supposed to be a religion. And I said, oh, okay, we've got to do something about this. Not just gays and just lesbians, people who are sick, people who have done some sort of crime in the past or whatever, and they're ex-prisoners. Can we do something about this? The answer, of course we can. But to fully understand you, you had to talk, feel, understand what we go through in life. Imagine what it'd be like for a woman who really wants to be a Buddhist, but can't be a nun. It is not acceptable to me. So of course she will just fight against it, argue against it, and make it happen. That's one of the things which I am proud of. Proud in the sense that you've done something with your life to get a bhikkhuni monastery, a nun's monastery over in Oxford. I do have some regrets. I wish it was in Cambridge.
Even further from Sheffield.
Yeah. Well, Sheffield would be better, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah, when we get enough, we can bring some nuns up here.
It's nice.
Actually, that's an idea.
Why not?
Yeah, because it's my hometown.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So okay.
There's one more here, right? Yeah?
Yeah, so how have you
Be the last.
overcome blockages in meditation?
Oh, they're easy.
Blockages.
Blockages, you just stay with them. You don't try and get rid of them. You allow them to disappear. A lot of times, there is always a bit of fear in meditation. You're letting go of something. And sometimes you feel there'll be a lesser person if you let go of something. You never are. You let go of something and you get deep in meditation. Even as like a husband with a partner, as a wife, you'll be so much better human being if you can let go of those things. Don't be afraid. Please don't ever think that allowing him to meditate would mean your relationship suffers. It only gets better and better and better. And I put my hand up. If that doesn't work, I'll bend over, you can kick my bum. Okay, great.
Ah,
You go on over there?
last one, maybe. I
Yeah.
don't-
Sorry. My dad, and since then, when it happened, I'm thinking, how can I use this? And then I'm thinking of myself, if we're trying to use this experience to it as myself. What should I do with this group?
Okay, first of all,
Can you paraphrase?
yes, we're saying that he lost his father, and how does he deal with the grief of losing a father? I often say about my own experience, my father died when I was only 16. I loved that man so much, and I never cried when he died, at his funeral, or ever since. The reason why I never cried, I regarded the 16 years I had with him was so precious. It was like I was at a concert, a brilliant concert. If I was allowed at a funeral, I'd let people, if you really appreciated your father or mother or friend who passed away, stand up and clap your hands. Well done, Dad. That's how I felt. I felt privileged to be there for 16 years. I'd have loved 25 years or 50 years. Sometimes I would have loved for him to see me now as a monk. But that wasn't to be. I'm so grateful for the 16 years he gave to me. And how could I ever feel sad having those 16 years? Grief is when you focus on what's been taken away. Gratitude is focusing on what you've had. Thank you for those 16 years. He was the one who told me, son, I'll just paraphrase it quickly, the door of my heart will always be open to you, son, no matter what you do, how you turn out. It was unconditional love. That's what only a parent can usually do for you. Thank you, son. Please feel grateful. And say, thank you, Dad, for giving me that unconditional love. I will never ever forget that. And how I share that beautiful message with others. I write books about opening the door of your heart. I just go to jails and say, open the door of the prisons. I go and say, if one of you is open the door of your heart to who you are and celebrate your life. Never mourn it. Too much to celebrate.
Can I add to that, Ajahn, and ask,
Yeah.
what about opening the heart to grief? Because I think it's a natural emotion.
Right. You do feel very grief. Open the door of your heart to it. Enjoy. There's nothing wrong with being sad. There's nothing wrong with feeling disappointed. There's nothing wrong with feeling tired. Nothing wrong with being sick. I don't know how many people who are sick who hide it. Instead, just if you feel you need a rest, take a break. Why not? I'll never. There's this one lady was giving a talk like this, and she lay down. We had a Buddha statue. She had her feet pointed to the Buddha statue, which in the Thai Buddhist culture is a real no-no. Worse than that, when other people were meditating, she started snoring. And other people said, you're not allowed to do that. That's against the rules. And we did have rules not to snore when you're meditating. But then when they disturbed her, I told his so-called disciples off. She was a victim of domestic violence. She was so too afraid to actually go to sleep in her own house. She hadn't slept properly for days. She came to our temple. She felt safe. Thank you for coming, and thank you for going to sleep in our temple.
So went away.
Okay.
That's it. It's good.
Okay.
Get there.
So it's gone?
Don't know.
Okay.
Just keep it still. It'll be all right.
But from that time on, if anybody during a talk or during a meditation, they feel really tired, please lay down. Have a nice sleep. If anybody moves you or criticizes you, I would say, oh, there was some reason for the person wanting to go to sleep and going to sleep. Please give them that opportunity. This lady, it was the only place she could ever find where she could have a safe sleep for a few minutes. Isn't that worth it? So that's one of the reasons why.
Oh.
Yes, okay.
No, no, you. All right, I can finish personally.
Okay.
Thank you. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. You know what that means? Oh,
So,
so thank you for that really
Yeah.
moving talk and for being here in Sheffield, coming all this way and suffering the cold
not
and
cold.
forgiving.
You're very
Sheffield.
warm to me.
Yeah. So yeah, do you want to say a few words about
Oh,
other things?
other things. She was saying that please, be kind and generous towards Anukampa Bhikkhuni project. They got a new monastery over in, a new residence over in Oxford, and they still got debts, they still got to make it warmer. We still got an ordination ceremony, the first novice nun on next Saturday.
This Saturday.
That is the next one. Last Saturday was a couple of days
Put your
ago.
hand up.
Who is that? Yeah, she's going to be wearing brown. We usually wait until their robes are dirty enough. They can't be warm, so they can get some brown robes on.
2.5 years nearly.
Yes, wonderful. We're making it happen, and you're part of it. And after a while, you see this place grow, 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 grow. And it's wonderful just to see how it affects our community. I've come all the way over from Australia to make this happen. And that's why we're trying to, you come over this way and to make sort of the monastery work. And once it starts to work, it's for each one of you to enjoy, to make the best use of. And I know it's just such an amazing organization that soon it just grow, 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 grow. And I'm in trouble now. This last range retreat, actually right now, I've got 30 monks in the monastery where I live. Too many. That's why we have to spend more time creating other monasteries where they can go and live. I'm trying to get rid of monks and nuns to make sure there are more places in the world that can really serve Buddhism in the best possible way.
So they can find out more over there. Shall I say something?
Yeah,
All
sure.
right. Awesome. Yeah, so maybe one day we'll get 31 nuns. Maybe. But we only have a monastery for about 3 or 4. Still places available.
So you think only 3 or 4?
But
That's what
once
I
we're
thought.
full, once we're full, we
Mhm.
can send 1 or 2 to a new place and start a new place. So really, in response to people's questions here about finding a community, the way we can really do it, I think, is to create community, because if we sit around and wait for community to happen, it just never will. And that's the thing with the Bhikkhuni Sangha, if we're just talking about it or trying not to talk about it and trying to avoid the subject, it's never going to happen. That's, I think, what went wrong in the monastic Sangha, the monk Sangha, isn't it? That there was so much kind of delaying of it and talking about it and finding reasons not to. Ajahn Brahm was one of the people who said, let's just do it, because we're never going to get there and people are suffering and people need each other. So we're going ahead and it's the early days, but please be involved. I mean, this is one of the ways that you're already being involved. You're coming to these kind of talks. We have other retreats. In fact, I'm doing a New Year retreat near Sheffield in the Worlow Spiritual Centre on the 2nd and 3rd of January. That'll be about loving kindness. Excellent.
Okay.
So it's a nice way to start the year. Somebody on the live stream was asking how you deal with negative emotions and fear of world wars happening and all the rest. And I think for me, one of the ways is just to create the opposites, and really try and cultivate harmony right around me in my immediate environment. So this is what we're trying to do as a community, and you can join us online. We have twice weekly Sutta discussions where you can talk with each other as well as with me and eventually other nuns. And we also have metta meditations on our YouTube channel, like on Zoom. So as well, you can join it live. Silent meditation sessions as well, which is maybe a bit strange if you've not been to any before, but it helps you if you want to start a daily practice. Yeah, we just basically come together on a Tuesday and a Thursday and meditate for 45 minutes. So you have this appointment with yourself. And you can find out more ways to be involved over there on the table, where we have one of our other Anagarkas, Anagarka Chi is sitting there, with another friend who's come all the way from Argentina to be here for the next couple of weeks. So you can find out ways to be involved and yeah, and support us so that we can become a community. The lovely thing about the Bhikkhuni Sangha, that's the community of monastic women, is that it's quite new in a sense. I mean, it actually goes back to the time of the Buddha, but because there's been this long gap of, you know, of bhikkhunis really having opportunities, yes, of misogyny and patriarchy, that's kind of, yeah, taken away our opportunities in many ways. The advantage of that is that we can start from a clean slate and develop a kind of teaching, a kind of community that responds to the immediate need of the community we find ourselves in. So we don't have so much of the kind of cultural overlay that some monasteries have. So it's fresh and it's hopefully going to be very inclusive and dynamic. And we really warmly welcome you to be involved. So thank you very much to everyone for being here. And yeah, tomorrow night we're in Birmingham, not very far. So if you can get on a train, come to Birmingham. I'm not sure if there's enough Wi-Fi there for the live stream. We might try. We could try, but can't make any promises. It's not really on our list. And then Friday night we're in Oxford, and that'll be live streamed as well. So yeah, stay with us for the tour.
Birmingham's not as good as Sheffield.
Nah, you can't say that because the Birmingham people might be listening.
I'll ask forgiveness.
Yeah, ask forgiveness to the people in Birmingham and forgiveness to everyone here. So please forgive yourselves. Ajahn Brahm always tells his disciples, you're already pre-forgiven for anything you've done in the past, anything you're doing now, and anything you'll ever do in the future. So you're already pre-forgiven. So that means you can just enjoy the wonderful things you do and keep on doing wonderful things. So very good. Thank you. So.
Sorry.